the peak of the spiritual journey is called what? Ascension, or the rapture, or the enlightenment level, apotheosis. The ability to go up to the next level in the heavenly realms, or the next level of enlightenment, without physically dying, right? Everybody knows, well, if there's an afterlife, you die, you get there, because you're dead, so you're going to where you go after you're dead. You know, that's not a news flash, right? If you were good, it should be better. If you were bad, well, we told you should have been better, right? I mean, what else can we say, right? You know, you know, it doesn't matter which faith you come from. Sorry, but if you thought this was it, everybody's been telling you there's way more going on, kiddo. It doesn't matter which side of the planet you're on. There's always been some spiritual leader of every single faith. There's good people in every religion. They're always telling you there's more than what you think going on, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Actions have consequences.
What's that?
Actions have consequences.
Oh,
and
they
so
sure
all
do.
of us are trying to achieve the highest state. And that's how come if you listen to the new buzzwords, you'll hear that word, ascension, or enlightenment, or apotheosis. And that ties in with the concepts of Christ and resurrection. If you look up the story of the Prophet Muhammad, you'll have him describing an ascension scene in his life, and many of the spiritual guides talking about ascension. Now, I always tell people I talk a lot about pop culture, because when people talk about spirituality or religion, then people get disinterested. Then all of a sudden I say, hey, what is it that Daniel Jackson's trying to achieve on Stargate? Ascension. What is it that the ship, the Destiny, is trying to achieve in Stargate Universe? Ascension. If you're an old fan of the show Andromeda, Andromeda was a ship that was ascended, right? You hear this concept in sci-fi a lot. And so you're starting to see this connection, especially in the West, where you're realizing, oh my God, it's not the meek that'll inherit the earth, it's the geeks. It's the Trekkies, right? It's all the sci-fi genre nerds, all the people who watch the horror flicks and the B-rate sci-fi shows, man. It's all the people who watch Sci-Fi Channel, like me and you, you know. We're the people who are looking out at the skies and at the heavens. And then you look at scriptures and you see stuff like the heavens belong to those from the earth who are the stargazers, right? Those who dream, those who ponder imaginary things. And you're starting to see that change and people starting to express it. And I think we're starting to get to the point that people call a Renaissance generation, right? Where the technology and the art and the music and the TV and all the traditional controls on all those things are falling apart, so that everybody has the ability to create and express anything they want, and there's almost no limits. And when that happens, you have virtual freedom, right? Because anybody can say anything. There's no censor on me and you right now. We can tell the world anything. It just depends on how good we are at communicating.
Exactly. Now, do you believe that, say, a lot of people believe that there's going to be UFO disclosure soon. Maybe not by our government, but it'll come out where it's undeniable. Now, do you feel that that will affect religions? Now, I know some think it will, some don't. I don't think it should, but what do you feel about that?
Well, it's kind of a strange question because, you know, it used to be such a taboo subject, right? We can't talk about anything to do with the supernatural. If it's not physical, then it's not Western science, and you're a Fox Mulder who shouldn't come out of the closet, right? You know, you should stay in the basement. You know what I'm saying? So it used to be taboo. If you were into any fringe science, then you were considered fringe. Well, now Fringe is a TV show and it's considered popular. So being fringe is now cool. Being genre is now cool. Being the goth or the emo is now cool, you know? So everything's kind of changed. In the ancient times, this kind of knowledge was only kept to the secret esoteric societies and the high priests and the secret storytellers, right? They only were the ones who knew about the spiritual world. And the reason why that was because they knew what we are starting to know now and everybody's starting to talk about. Yes, we're not alone in the universe, and there are beings of light, but there are also beings of dark. Mm-hmm. And so the spiritual leaders of every community always told all their followers, you don't mess with the supernatural, period. Because true beings of light wouldn't manipulate you, and you should have no interference from the heavenly realms right now. Because surprisingly, whether you call it a non-interference from the spiritual world, like from the Muslim world, they tell you don't deal with the jinn or the demons. The Jews the same thing, the Christians the same thing. Well, in Star Trek, we call that the Prime Directive, right? We're in an immature world that isn't aware of what's going on in outer space or in the heavens, and so any of the beings of light from the higher realms aren't supposed to interact with us. The only beings that do interact with us are the dark ones. Ah, what a mess, right? Klingons, except we're in a strange situation where they're not visibly open to us, right? Not unless you're like on the extreme David Icke side of things where he's going out telling people, listen, I know there's actually reptilians here. For the majority of us, we're saying, look, most of the people, that guy might be a total prick, but I don't think he's a reptilian,
Yeah, I know a few people in my life that if they were to be another race, it would be reptilian for sure. But, there are people who believe that.
Yeah, we say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because, a lot of what people understand about what happened during the First World War and the Second World War, and anytime you bring up Nazis or Germans or Jews, you got to be really very careful. And a lot of the concepts that they had was this kind of concept, that maybe the Jews are not the same humans as the rest of us, or maybe this race is not our race, and maybe we're the Aryans, we're a special race. And a lot of the Aryans had this early understanding that's just now being aware by people that there was an Atlantis, there was an Ultima Thule, there was these ancient societies, except like all people who get manipulated by the dark, then they start to think, oh, we're the master race, and it's our job to kill everybody else to bring back the golden oldie days, right?
Yeah, that's a Hitler for you, yeah.
Right? That's not the plan, right? That's not the fourth plan or the Third Reich or the final solution. Everybody always gets that God complex, or their idea that their race is the superior race. Where all of us who are of the light are saying the whole point of the earth was to understand all the races and faiths and see how you're all connected, not separate. See how you all could unite and become something great. And not until we can achieve that kind of oneness and understanding as a world would we be allowed to be welcome to the Federation of Planets or whatever you want to call it from the show, right? But there is that kind of concept even from a spiritual community. And so you tend to see this thing where, the secret rabbis will keep their knowledge secret, and only to a few people they will say, well, some of the other bloodlines are not necessarily like ours. And you hear that crazy talk, and then, the modern Jews will say, no, that's not true, although the old rabbis used to think that. Well, then the Nazis used to think that, and then this race thinks that, and then that race thinks that. Now we're almost at the point in the whole world where we've gone through all of the races, we've gone through almost all the wars, where we're all realizing maybe there is dark and maybe there is evil, but it's not necessarily in another race, right? We're all affected by it. And just as there's evil and we're all affected by it, there's also light and we're all affected by it. And we've almost got to the point as a world where, like we were saying earlier, we've almost outgrown war, right? We've almost got to the point where our economies are so mixed, our countries are so mixed. Even right now, the problem that they're having with Pakistan is they don't want to declare a war, even though they're dropping bombs, because there's so many Indians and Pakistanis in America. And you don't want to actually declare war because that's not what you want. You don't want to escalate the blowback. And so they're realizing, war or blowing people up is not the best solution because it always creates more blowback.
Sometimes actions speak louder than words, and like you said, they are dropping bombs. So, that's war if I ever seen it. And I don't know, I'd like to believe that we're getting beyond a society that's warlike, but I just don't see it yet. I'd like to believe it, but I just don't see it yet.
Well, hopefully we find more dreamers out there.
Yeah, I hope so.
We have to keep trying, Just imagine something better.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And, speaking of God, people, really, I believe people control their own destinies. That's free will, if you want to go there. And I think that you get, like you say, that fork in the road. You could go one of two ways. And I don't believe in coincidence much. I think that everything happens for a reason. Someone will say, oh, gosh, there's terrible thing happened to me, but then it's opened the door to something else. So I don't know. I don't believe that everybody's fate is just laid out for them. I think it is what you make of it.
No, of course, you have to do your point, and this is what we were saying. You're going to have to decide how much crap or troubles or trials you need to go through before you decide, you know what, I have to have a little bit more trust, and you kind of let go and submit yourself to realizing that these are trials that you go through to spiritually benefit from, right? Because you can always blame people and blame yourself, and, to be honest, people will tell you, especially those who are spiritual, you ask God for forgiveness for a bunch of stuff. The truth is God's already forgiven you. The hardest part is asking you to forgive yourself for how hard you are on yourself. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what I say. You have to forgive yourself before you can expect God to forgive you. And that's something I say, and some don't agree with it, but I really do. If you can't forgive yourself, I think that, when you do come to that judgment day, I think that if you're reviewing your life and you can't watch it without covering your eyes because you can't believe some of the things you've done, well, I think that's the result you're going to get. So you need to be able to forgive yourself for sure.
And that is what most people don't understand. Now, the crazy part is I'm talking about this as a Muslim, and when you talk about Jesus Christ, people who believe in Christ believe that Christ didn't die. He ascended to the heavens, and he's going to return. Now, those who believe that the fact that Christ ascended, or there is Christ consciousness, or what we call ascension, or rapturing up, or enlightening up, those people claim that they will ascend or find ascension or apotheosis before the final tribulations. That's the fork in the road that we're talking about. So those people who are searching on this journey and saying, yes, I would like to ascend and avoid the tribulation, and I realize that there's a way out. Please, God, if there is, help me get out of here, right? Whatever that way is.
Exactly.
I'm fine not being the king or the president or whatever. I'm willing to give it all that up, right? I don't need any of the worldly fame and glory. If there's a way to avoid any tribulation, I believe that Christ is the Messiah and everlasting. I believe that all the messengers and light beings are living. I believe God is a living God, the God of Abraham, Joseph, Jacob. I believe all these people, there's an afterlife. And so if there is, I can ascend. I can enrapture. I can go into the light, the ascension, the apotheosis. That's the fork in the road. And I don't know what happens, whether a bunch of people disappear like a strange movie set, or whether, everybody just wakes up and there's a bunch less people, or, we all don't know what's going to happen. But we're realizing we're getting to a point where it looks like something dramatic is going to happen. Now, does that mean we might get contact from beings from, outer space? Does that mean we're almost ready for a UFO disclosure? We were talking about how in the old days people weren't ready to talk about these things, and now it looks like they're getting ready to talk about it. Even the most orthodox, strict group, the Vatican, has now come out and said, yeah, well, right?
Oh, yeah. They're even coming out, saying, that sure, there probably is life out there. And I think, of course,
and
they
it's
know
not like
a lot,
they released
too.
the Vatican secrets and told us everything. They just said, yeah, well, if this happens, no biggie. I mean, it was such a non-disclosure. Everybody was like, what? After 2,000 years of running the show so tight, that's all you're going to give us?
Yeah, exactly. And, the Vatican, they're a lot like a government. I mean, they keep their secrets, and, while they think it's for the best, I don't. And I think if there's anything there that was meant to be shared with mankind, it should be shared. And it stinks that they decide whether we can handle the truth or not. It's just not right in my eyes.
Well, that's one of the strange things about the Muslim community from the East and the West, and whether it's the Muslims or even the Asian and the Oriental community who has a lot of Eastern spiritual connection with a lot of the beings from other realms. You're starting to realize now that even though there's not physical contact yet, those who are a little bit more intuitive, those who are a little bit more connected with their sixth sense, or a little bit more spiritually developed, or less engrossed with the chaos of what they call the worldly life, or duality in the third dimension. Those people have always been in the Eastern, especially in the Eastern mystics, more connected to the spiritual side. All of them have been talking about the fact that these other worlds exist, and it's becoming more open.